Originally, it was all horsepower. Let's build drivetrain, crazy horsepower. But now horsepower is relatively easy to make.
Yes.
Now I think a lot more focus has gone into the inside of the car because that's where you spend all your time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's nothing worse than seeing like this crazy nice car, and then you walk up and it's got a couple of clapped out old stock vinyl seats in it. So you're doing all these things on the outside for everybody else's enjoyment. And then inside you're sitting on some clapped out old spring seat trying to keep yourself there. And it's like, why not spend some money on the inside and make it nice?
Welcome back to another episode of Modify with TrickFactory Customs. If this is your first time watching, my name is Elvis.
Tim?
Yeah, and as you can see, Rob is missing. What happened to Rob?
Rob's doing SEMA things.
Yes.
So he didn't want to sit in on this one because he's got a lot to do.
So if you guys do not know, we're a custom automotive shop based here in British Columbia, Canada. And we talk about cars on this podcast. We're usually with Rob, but like Tim said, he's doing SEMA things. Very busy. It's the SEMA crunch. We're like 2 weeks to SEMA at this point.
Yep.
And so it's getting it's always been real, but it's getting
crunchy now.
It's getting very crunchy. And so even though this is a weekend for us, but we're still having to work on the car. And so Rob is pretty much doing that now. And on this episode, we were supposed to have a guest on, but he ditched us. But we're gonna maybe try to have him on at some point, at some other time.
Got to be some miscommunication, being as he reached out to us.
I know.
Something has to have happened.
Nah, he's like, you guys suck, go away. So
could have happened too.
He looked at our Instagram at how much roastage was happening. I was like, I'm not gonna be a part of it.
I was hoping to create some more havoc today.
I know. Well, more havoc might be happening because we are talking about custom car interiors, because that's a thing I feel like in today's world that gets overlooked a lot. But I mean,
I agree with that.
I feel like it gets overlooked for me at least. Or the types of builds that I see on the internet. A lot of people pay more attention to the exterior of how it looks and almost give the interior an afterthought. So we are going to be talking about that on today's episode. And we're also going to be talking about what different types of interiors, because some people say they want a race car, but a race car means something very different in interior standards.
Yes.
And so we're going to be talking about all of that, different levels of interiors, custom interiors, all of that good stuff. Street car versus race car. Before we get started, what's been going on? What's happening? It's probably repetitive. SEMA stuff.
Chasing parts, crossing borders, running all over the place, trying to get everything that we need in time. So
do we think we're going to get everything in time?
Yeah, it looks like we will.
Okay, awesome.
I mean, we got a lot of work to do, but we'll get there.
Yeah, and so
all that basically we have left to do now is
assemble.
Interior.
Interior. Yeah, true.
So we still got some big moves to make, so that's basically what I'll be focusing on right after this podcast.
Mm-hmm. So at this point, the interior has been, or not the interior, the chassis of the G-Wagon has been completely final painted.
Right.
Glossy, it's shiny. It just got delivered yesterday to the body shop.
Came out of the body shop.
Yeah.
Now it's back on our side, so we're going to start putting it together. Literally, Rob's down there blasting nuts and bolts and getting ready for Cerakote, so we'll have our rolling chassis together by the end of the weekend. Main body goes to paint and body on Monday after I make all the moves. But they've been painting everything already, so all that's left to be painted is the main body. And then hopefully next week we can get into final assembly.
Finally. That's awesome.
It's been a long haul.
Yeah. Yes.
And interior.
Yes, and interior. So what is happening with that?
The bulk of our interior is done, and then now we're just focusing on the dash and the console.
Okay. And so we're doing a custom-ish dash.
Yes.
Because we're not using traditional gauges. Everything is all digital, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Staying on theme with the EV. Everything in this particular car has gone to like capacitive touch screens and LCD panels. And
so with that said, we're just going to dive into today's topic of custom car interiors. We have, I feel like we have for the past few or year. Wow. I just realized we've been doing this podcast for a year now, actually.
That's crazy.
I was looking at the feed, and I think we're at like episode 55 or 56 now. And so we've been doing this for over a year, every week. But in all of that time, we've talked a lot about the design of the exterior, a lot like wide bodies, engines, exhaust, a lot of other things. But I feel like we haven't talked almost at all about interior.
About the insides.
Yeah, which is interesting because the inside is where you spend most of your time. I mean, on your car, whenever you are doing your Evo, how important was the interior? Because that interior you did a lot of non-stock things to it.
We went almost full race car with it.
Yeah.
Aside from leather wrapping the dash, leather wrapping my seats, and then a few other little pieces, but that was just to keep... I didn't want to go full race car. Mm-hmm. So we kept it a little bit classy inside, but yeah, it's pretty sparse. And it sounds sparse. Like it's like you're riding in a tin can.
Yeah.
So, I mean, your perception of what you think it's going to be and what the reality of it is crazy.
Okay, so that's an interesting segue because you mentioned not full race car. So let's talk about full race car interior versus full street car interior.
Well, race car is no interior.
Yeah.
So, and then everything that you're doing in an effort to make your race car fast makes your driving experience on a comfort level worse. Because you're removing sound deadening, you're removing panels, you're removing like all kinds of different, like your underlay for your carpet. Like some of these cars now that we're dealing with, like the carpet underlay is like 4 inches thick.
Oh my god!
Which obviously eliminates a huge amount of road noise. Like some of these cars are getting to the point where they're almost too quiet.
Yeah.
So it's like they've gone all the way the other way. So when you go race car and you start stripping all this stuff out, you hear everything.
Yeah.
Every pebble that's bouncing off your floorboard, like all of it. So it's like, yeah, it looks super cool.
It looks sick.
But when you're going down the road, you're hearing transmission and tire road noise.
Clank,
and
clank, clank, clank,
like
clank.
everything. Like you get to hear it all. Like
yeah.
So, and even just the amount of insulation they put on your firewall and the noise that it eliminates is crazy. Mm-hmm. So like you get in that car and it's as visceral as it can be.
Yeah.
In good ways and bad ways. Like you're hearing induction noises sucking exhaust and gears whirring, and like I got my fuel pumps and my water pumps run through the interior. So like I get in my car, I turn on all these things. I have no sound deadening. I have no nothing. I have carbon fiber door panels. It sounds like I'm getting in a hot tub. Like it's literally it's like it's just bubbling fuel and coolant, and like it's crazy.
So some people say they want a race car, they want race car interior, but you don't really want a race car interior because, or I guess depending on what kind of visceral feeling that you're going for.
Yeah, I mean, you see all these kids that gut the interiors out of their car, and it does make an impact, like 100%. Like we gutted a BMW that we were turning into a drift car, and it was a noticeable improvement in power.
Really?
By the time we gutted everything out of it, I think it was probably like a little over 400 pounds.
Oh,
like that door panel, seats, even the carpet alone probably
400
weighs.
pounds.
I bet you the carpet weighs 50 pounds.
Oh my
With all the
gosh.
underlay and all the stuff in it. And by the time we got everything out of there, it was significant.
That's pretty crazy.
So,
And like how much usually does like sound deadening play into the weight of everything? Like is sound deadening usually heavy or no?
heavy.
Okay.
Especially if you're using stuff like Dynamat. Like if say you did an entire car, which you don't need to, that's like one of those things that everybody does wrong. Like you don't need to Dynamat the entire interior of your car.
Really?
No.
Based on what I see on YouTube, you need to.
Yeah, basically it's to remove, like, and when you do it, it's crazy. It works super, super good. Like you hear any of these doors close on any of our cars, like we do it, and it's just like, dunk.
So what parts do you want to Dynamat?
Normally, if you're going to do the base, you would find any of the larger panels that would be prone to vibration. So like the center of your floorboards, you would put a square in like each of the footwells, maybe on the back firewall. But like now guys are like doing the roof, the pillars, they're doing everything. So, and I think that stuff's about 60 or 70 pounds a case. So you get three
What's
cases.
a case? How big?
Like a case is probably 12 sheets. And
Okay.
they're probably 12 inches wide by 2 feet maybe. So you do a whole car in that.
That's expensive.
It's expensive, and you're putting like 150 pounds of literally like it's almost like a tar-based sound ender.
Oh.
So you strip the whole interior out, and then you put 150 pounds of it back in,
So
just
you're
to try to keep the
adding
noise
back
down.
more weight. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I'm going to talk of the extreme other side of whenever you make it almost too quiet. Like cars these days are so quiet. Even I heard in the new, I think it's the new Rolls-Royce Spectre. I don't know again if this is a real thing or if it's just for marketing, but they said they almost like it's so quiet now because Rolls-Royces used to have massive V12s, but Rolls-Royce is going all electric. And so with the new Spectre, have you heard about the Spectre?
I didn't hear about
Okay,
the EV one.
let me. Yeah,
I heard about the road noise being almost zero to the point that it's become dangerous.
Yes. So apparently, it became the road noise. I think even with the V12 car, it became so quiet, especially even with the new Spectre, that Rolls-Royce had to pipe in some noise just because people like it almost does the same thing to you that like what do they call those things you immerse yourself
Deprivation
in?
tank?
Yes, a sensory deprivation tank, and people start to get crazy when they're driving and there's no silence or there's no noise at all, and people almost started to get sick because of that.
Yeah, it doesn't take very long either.
Which is crazy.
I heard something about it. It's like 20 minutes. Or
Really?
something. You start going crazy. Like if you hear no noise, like if there's no sound at all, it's like you start hearing your own heartbeat.
Oh, wow.
And then like 15 minutes later, you start losing your mind. It's like a form of torture, I think.
That is so crazy. And so I just find it, I don't know if that's like an actual thing or if it was just marketing.
I don't know if it would have to be. That seems crazy.
Yeah, because like I watch a lot of YouTube, but in one of them, one of the channels I watch is Throttle House, and they did the video of the Rolls-Royce Spectre, and it was like a whole team of people. They were literally drumming. A whole band they were drumming, and they closed the doors of the thing, and you barely could even hear anything with them at full, literally right next to them.
See, that seems dangerous.
Yeah. Because if someone was like, just for safety wise, like it's almost too quiet. So in the case of adding all of that sound deadening, or not just sound deadening, but making it as quiet as possible, like what are some things minus sound deadening that you might do if you wanted to, for example, if a customer wanted to be like, oh, I want to make my car as quiet as possible, like what are some things you would do minus sound deadening?
Minus sound deadening?
Yeah.
You basically got to cover all the panels, more or less everything. And then you got carpet underlays, you got your carpet materials, all the foam and stuff that goes in your seats, headliner, all that stuff would come into play. And then like those cars are on a whole nother level. Like they got thicker glass, the door seals are way thicker
glass. Yeah.
So I mean, on a lot of cars, there's only so much you can do, especially muscle cars. Like traditionally, window seals in muscle cars and hot rods are not super effective. And then that's where a lot of your road noise will come from. So that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
But like, you look at some of the glass in some of these like Rolls Royces and like Maybachs, and it's like this thick. So like that's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
And then the door sealing, like the door seals are like a lot of times they'll be double row seals.
Oh shoot, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
And they're taking it to a whole nother level. They'll have sound deadening on the insides of the fenders, in the fender cavities.
Oh, that's a
And in
place
the
that I would have
bulkhead.
never even
Yeah.
thought about as well. Oh,
Well,
okay.
you get into like, you pull a fender off of like, a Bentley or something, they'll have that entire cavity filled with a big foam piece just so that there's no opportunity to make any noise.
Wow.
So if you're going to that level, then that's a completely different thing. So trying to apply that, I haven't had to apply that strategy to any of our
car
stuff
yet?
I'd say probably the craziest one we've ever done is that Defender. Was the hardest one to make quiet because it's literally like a tin can.
Yeah.
Like there's no like the doors are maybe 2 inches thick. So trying to make that thing quiet and sound like a new car was a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's just all comes down to sound deadening and seals.
And so, like, did you apply, or are we going to apply the same thing? Because we also have a car that we're going to make EV, but we have multiple cars we're making EV. So are you going to apply some of those things to, like, for example, our G-Wagon or even the Defender? Because the other Defender,
will be
the
getting
Series
it for,
2.
Yeah, we'll be getting it for sure. The G-Wagon is pretty well insulated from the factory.
Okay.
So we'll add a little bit, but most of the G-Wagon sound deadening and barriers are on the underside of the car, on the outside.
Yeah.
So whereas...
like just spray on sound?
No,
like,
they'll have like these bolted in mats that they put underneath that help
okay.
isolate sound. And so we'll be reusing a lot of that stuff just because it looks OEM and it looks perfect. But on the inside, we will put a little bit of sound deadening. But the reality is it's convertible.
Yeah.
So it's you're chasing your tail because
that's true.
It's only as good as the top is ever going to be.
Yeah.
So that one will be pretty tough. But the Defender, like I say, it's literally a tin can. Like you can, every panel of oil cans.
Oh, okay.
So we'll end up either putting structure behind it to stop the vibration, or we'll end up sound deadening the crap out of it.
And so going back to the topic of like interiors, let's talk about custom dashes, because there's a lot of ways that you can go with, from like digital gauges, analog. Which one are you more of a fan of? Are you more of like traditional?
Yeah, I like traditional analog gauges.
Yeah. And so on your Evo, you don't have any traditional though,
no,
right?
I got an LCD panel, but that's more from the race car side of it. So that condenses a huge amount of information into a very small space.
Yeah.
So if I was to run traditional analog gauges in that setting, I would be, like one of those 90s guys with the 25 gauges in my dash. So like I can toggle through different screens to see all the information I need to see. Whereas, I think just on the main screen, there's probably, it's monitoring 9 different things. So I was like, you're going to have just, your dash end up looking like bug eyes.
Yeah. That is true. Or like a plane, like the inside of a plane.
Yeah.
Just
And some people like that
everywhere.
look.
Yeah. But I feel like there's also a tipping point as well, because sometimes it becomes way too much. It's kind of like...
Well, for that, because I have a PDM, so like all the wiring comes into a main panel, and then from there, it's just one network cable out to the dash. So it makes a lot of sense because it eliminates a tremendous amount of wiring, and then it brings all your sensor wires essentially into a centralized location instead of having to run stuff in every single gauge.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just eliminating a bunch of work because it makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, all those gauges, like, you can have mechanical gauges, electrical gauges. So if you got electrical gauges, there's sensors and then power and wires for each one of them. And then if you have mechanical gauges, you're running physical lines into your car.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, you got a lot of options. But now, most people just run that centralized box. So you run all your wires to one spot and then just run a network cable over to your screen.
Oh, okay.
Interiors are crazy now. What we were talking about a bit earlier, how they're more or less overlooked. I think in the last 5 years, that's transitioned. Now interiors are like a major part of the build.
Oh, really?
And now you hear interiors getting up to like $100,000, which is crazy. That's like, a huge part of the build budget is the interior now.
Yeah.
And I think the horsepower thing, originally it was all horsepower. Let's build drivetrain, crazy horsepower. But now horsepower is relatively easy and expensive to make.
Yes.
Now I think a lot more focus has gone into the inside of the car because that's where you spend all your time. And then that side is like, you have people doing renders and full-on designs and 3D printing and 3D scanning, and like interiors have gotten insane.
Yeah, it's
Like,
pretty cool.
Absolutely insane.
It's insane. Like I've been looking at a lot of things. I feel like I've gotten into interiors like ever since I started here at the shop, but the attention to detail that's paid, or that we pay to interiors, it blows my mind. Because my previous experience with interiors or custom interiors,
Just throw some race seats in and hit the road.
not even race. No, like the race seats were too expensive for me back then. So when I got started, for example, my Dodge and I've been hadn't been driven in years and years. And so the interior had been, let's just say there was a night fight happening in the seat. And so it was a disaster. And so I was like, I can't really afford race seats. They're too expensive. And these were like, even the cheap race seats, I was like, I can't afford these. Let's go with the most basic interior. So I got, so I'm originally from Nigeria, actually. So we have some like traditional patterns that I'm like, oh, this is going to look sick on the inside of the car.
Nigerian Mexican blanket.
Yeah, exactly. And so I got the clothes that my mom had paid some money for, that she was like, oh, this is going to look amazing on you. And I cut it up. And I didn't even have a sewing machine at the time. And so I just...
Oh, you hand stitched?
Yeah.
Damn.
You know, I was thinking, I was like, come on, they say hand stitched. Like, they made it fancy, like hand stitched leather or hand stitched. I'm like, sweet, I'm going to be hand stitched. And it was a complete disaster.
I thought the only thing that you can endure hand stitching is like a steering wheel. That still takes like 4 hours.
It was terrible. Like,
It is.
because you don't even think about the little intricate details and all of the little like back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and the stitching. It was so long. I think I made myself bleed a few times because I didn't use a thimble or any of that. I was just sending it. And so the needle went into my skin. And after I was done, I swore that I would never do that in fact, never touch an interior with my own hands again.
It's a massive undertaking and super overlooked. Like the amount of time and effort that goes into interiors and being able to make patterns and just all of that stuff is huge.
Yes.
Like there's nothing worse than seeing like this crazy nice car and then you walk up and it's got a couple of clapped out old stock vinyl seats in it.
Yep.
And you see it a lot. But I mean, that's, I think, why things have progressed, because like if you have a 69 Camaro, how many 69 Camaros have we seen?
That is so
There's
true.
only so much you can do to it without changing it from a 69 Camaro, that now those, to separate yourself and set yourself apart, things almost had to go inside.
Yes.
And then now it's kind of like, I don't know who told me this, but like a piece of advice that I got when I was young is like, you spend a third of your life on your feet and a third of your life in bed. So you need a good mattress and good shoes.
Oh, that's good.
It's like your car. Where do you spend all your time? So you're doing all these things on the outside for everybody else's enjoyment. And then inside, you're sitting on some clapped out old spring seat, trying to keep yourself there. And it's like, why not spend some money on the inside and make it nice? That's where you are. It's supposed to be your car. So I mean, I think that's why it's transitioned.
Yeah. When I look at like roadster shop builds or any of these things, the interior is just as beautiful as the exterior.
Almost nicer.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the cars, based on the aesthetic, is like, the aesthetic is so clean that it's like, it's a 70 Chevelle. It looks very much like a 70 Chevelle. It's got big brakes. There might be some subtle body mods, but then the inside is where they've expressed themselves, let's say, and made it comfortable and enjoyable to be in. And everything now that you can get is like almost OEM quality. Like you can get great AC systems, great heaters, gauges, switch gear, all this kind of stuff, so you can put a super nice package together. Like you don't need to be in there on a bench seat just sliding around, you know? Like those days are gone, I think.
Yeah. And so I quickly realized that after I made my terrible interior, because I didn't even use any foam like reinforcement or add any extra padding or anything. It was just one layer too of just like the cloth and then the bare seat underneath, and it was a complete disaster. So after I thought I was never going to do that again. I mean, I had that for maybe a month, and I was just like, toss the seats. I got some race seats, but even those are like cheap seats or affordable seats. With very little foam. Yes.
Not very comfortable.
Yes.
Very purpose built.
Yeah. So if you're on a racetrack, like that's great. But like if you're spending like not 24 hours a day, but most of your lifetime in those seats, you want to have like more stuff to them. And that's also leading to the seats that I've seen us do. So there was a Porsche 911 that I watched the seats, I think it was a few months ago we did it. The one that we made, I think it was the tartan interior one. Oh my gosh. It was pretty cool to see.
Oh, the beige 964 with the Recaros?
Oh, seeing all the stuff that went into those seats and the interior and all of that, like that gave me so much appreciation for not just how much effort is in it, but how much it can transform it.
Subtle changes that made a massive transformation. So I mean, that's a big part of that. Like it doesn't take that like just making those seats match the car made the car look crazy. Like it had a massive impact.
Yeah.
And all we really did was recover the seats. Yeah. Which is crazy. So I mean, that's the evolution of people taking the time to make the whole project cohesive. I think makes a much better overall package. And then you listen to some of these guys, like we were talking earlier, like Jonathan Ward, like that guy super geeks out over just fabrics and textures. And like,
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest things. Like you look at Singer, like from the outside, like obviously, you know, they do crazy suspension things, all kinds of amazing engineering things go into those cars, but ultimately what made those cars jump off was the interior.
Yeah, they look so good.
They look so good.
Literally works of art.
Yeah, and now I think the separation between stock car interiors, like OEM stuff, and aftermarket stuff is like the bar is set so high with some of these OEM interiors now that you go open the, you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
Like even your daily driver could be
Yeah.
crazy, like super, super nice. And then there's so much more attention to just the driving experience now in your most mundane
So
commuter
true.
car. And then you get in your old car and it feels like you're sitting on a park bench. So it's like, that's what I think has jumped off the evolution. Whereas like in the 90s, car interiors suck.
Crap. Plastic everywhere.
Vinyl, whatever that fabric is, I don't know what the hell it's called, but it's horrible. Like you look at like a 90 Corvette and it's
Oh my gosh.
junk.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
absolute junk. Then you get in the new Corvette,
It's insane.
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It looks tremendous. Like just you get in it, you feel like you're getting in a fighter jet.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of new cars are like that too. But I mean, I'm talking even like
The most basic
SUV,
thing.
like your standard soccer model.
Yeah.
Like some of these minivans you're getting, you're
It's
like,
mind
"Damn,
blowing.
This is nice.
Mind blowing.
Infotainment and French stitch and all this kind of stuff.
I was literally just looking at the new Toyota Sequoia, I think,
Yeah,
and that
nice.
thing looks like a luxury car
It is.
on the
And
interior.
that's normal car. Well, it's not normal. It's expensive, but
It's
you
a-
know what
yeah.
I mean. Like it's not.
It's
some
not like a
luxury
Bentley or
vehicle.
something,
Yeah.
but which is really cool to see because if you look at like Bentley's, Rolls Royces back in the day,
You look at a 2005 Bentley
Yes.
Continental. That literally set the bar.
Yes.
That car is the reason why all of us can't stand to look at another diamond stitch interior
Mm-hmm.
ever. That is the car that's jumped off that entire thing. By today's standards, that's like a normal interior.
yes, I know.
Like,
That's what I was gonna
yeah,
say.
like it's crazy.
Yeah.
And you get into some of these crazy luxury vehicles and it's a
Oh
whole
my
nother
gosh.
level.
Yes.
So
Yeah, and so I think that has changed quite a bit, especially as people realized. I feel like the '90s interiors were one of the worst interior like qualities.
the worst
So
the worst time. Because before that they didn't even try.
no,
It's
no,
like here you get a steel dash and a couple of bucket seats, and then transitioning into that is like just junk, like
Yeah.
absolute junk.
I also feel like there's some beauty in the steel sort of dashes, like for example, like in the Chevelles and
Yeah.
all of that stuff. Like I feel like some of that is really cool because you see them like I don't know doing cool things with the sheet metal and all
Yeah,
of
it gives
that.
you opportunity to do different paint finishes and tie in a bunch of sort of different textures in it.
Yeah, like the body panels too. Like
Yeah.
I
You
just think
painted
it's cool.
under steel dash
Yes.
with the you put some leather on, like rewrapped out upper dash pad with leather and add some stitching, get some layers in there, and it looks unreal. Which creates a very cool vibe in itself. Without having to go all the way to like some crazy $100,000 3D printed
Yeah.
super interior. Like
That still blows my mind that car interiors could cost that much. Like whenever I heard that from you, my mind is blown.
it's crazy. Like the progression is crazy. Like 5 years ago, an interior was like you would hear crazy interior jobs like like Gabe's was doing for all these different guys back in the day, and it was like 40 grand, $40,000, and that seemed obscene.
A lot, yeah.
Now it's the days of like a $10,000 interior are long gone. And yeah, you want to start making panels and consoles and dashes and refoaming your seats, and like even the foam itself is expensive.
Yeah.
And it's like paint jobs, like the days of the
$500 paint job.
You can't even buy the materials for that much.
Yeah.
So you can see how they get that expensive, because you're probably $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 just in materials.
Yes.
Before,
Without labor.
without labor before you even get started.
Yes.
That's just to get the materials here. So then you start doing all these other crazy stuff and getting renders and 3D printing parts. It adds up so fast. And there's going to be people that are like, oh, fucking crazy, fucking
Yeah.
75 grand, but that's reality. You want to create an OEM style interior, you got to think about how much money they put into development of that interior.
Millions and millions of dollars.
To create this thing that you have to do in your first try. And it's
And and you're one person.
Yeah, it adds up so fast.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
just the hours of stitching in it. Like those, we just did a set of AMG seats, and it's like back in the day, you'd have like the front panel, maybe some pleats, and a single seam. There's like 40 pieces just in one seat that you got to stitch together.
And that's OEM.
That's OEM. So it's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. The sky is the limit with interior types of interior or that you can get. And like Tim said, like that's become in the recent years a focal point of the experience of owning the car.
The expectations are really high now.
Yeah. So, anything else?
I don't think so.
Sweet. I think that is
Chop
it.
it up. Make it make sense.
Yeah, I know. Make it make sense somehow because I feel like we've talked about a lot of things in this episode. And so with that said, thank you guys so much for watching this video, listening to this podcast. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, and we will see you guys later. Bye.